I once
Oh, you
spilled
did?
liquid smoke all over my station at the test kitchen, and it like never went away. The smell was just there for forever. It was always,
That's why we
it was
call you
always liquid smoke.
Smoky Morgan. All right, hi everybody. I'm Brian Roof,
And I'm Morgan Bowling.
and you're here for another edition of Ask ATK, where we're going to answer all of your kitchen queries and help you become better cooks and better people in the process. So we're
Better
gonna
people along the way. That's a real goal here. Better people.
So Morgan, you and I are going to split questions here. Do you want to
Cool.
answer first or ask first?
I'd rather ask first. I'd rather ease in a little bit and see how it goes, if you're okay with that.
Yeah.
I'll start.
Okay.
I'll give you an easy one if that's okay, or maybe easy. We'll see.
Well, yeah, probably all hard for me, but
No, I think it'll be great. So, Mr. W. Sensitive Foodie asks, what are some ways to add smoky flavor to dishes without a grill?
that's an easy one to work into. I would try using smoked paprika. You could buy that in sweet, which means it's not spicy, or you could buy it in spicy. You could use chipotle, either chipotle in adobo or chipotle chilies, which are smoked jalapenos. That comes in powder or in the adobo. You could also add a touch of liquid smoke to things if you really wanted to do that, but that's a slippery slope there. I'd be careful about.
I once spilled
adding
liquid
too
smoke
much.
all over. I once
Oh, you
spilled
did?
liquid smoke all over my station at the test kitchen, and it like never went away. The smell was just there for forever. It was always,
That's why we call you
always liquid smoke.
Smoky Morgan.
Smoky
All right.
Morgan, that's it.
Yeah, not too hard to do. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What about you? Are you ready? Here we go. This one's from Dan Callahan. Will keeping my cast iron pan in the oven during baking affect baking times?
I think it will. I mean, Brian, I'll be curious to see what you say about this. I think it takes so much heat, those things, they absorb so much heat, it will mess with your baking time. It'll probably slow things down and it'll lower the oven temperature. So I would not do it. Plus, it's wasted space. I think you want to use both oven racks.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And I was actually going to say the exact same thing.
Great minds. That's fun. Okay, so let's see. We have Alyssa. I'm not going to say your last name right, Alyssa, so I'm just going to say Alyssa. How do you make a tomatillo enchilada sauce that doesn't taste bitter?
Geez, I'm not sure why it's tasting bitter. Maybe a couple of things. Maybe you need to roast it a little longer, or you need to roast it a little less. I could see it if you roasted it not enough, you wouldn't develop enough of the sweetness in the fruit. But then if you roasted it too long, you could burn the skins too far, and that can impart an acrid flavor. Also try adding some onion to it that you also broil. I'm assuming you're roasting all this stuff before you make your tomatillo salsa. Or is it, I guess tomatillo enchilada sauce and salsa are kind of interchangeable.
Yeah, I think so.
But I would put some onion in there, and because once that roasts, it gets nice and sweet. So
Something everyone on Cook's Country knows about Brian is that he puts onion in everything. So I think this is good advice for you.
I'm like the only person who likes raw onion or raw scallions or shallots in any of the dishes, and everybody.
Well, I
always
can
gives
get
me
behind
grief
a
for
little
it.
bit of them. Just maybe not so much all the time.
Things are different now. Everybody's appreciating that.
Everyone's leaning into the onion. It's good.
Yeah, that's all we have to eat these days. So, all right. Let me see. Oh, here's a good one because you're from the south.
Oh, good. I'm ready. I'm
this is good.
excited.
This is from Anivi. What's the best way to cook okra? Fried, baked, boiled? What's your option?
Okay, my choice is fried, and probably with like a dipping sauce, like a mayonnaise-based dipping sauce. But what do you think, Brian? What's your favorite okra?
I like it fried a lot, but I don't like fried from frozen. You know, like a lot of times you go to these barbecue joints and they have it already in the buffet table or something. It's always the frozen stuff that's pre-breaded. I feel like you got to give it a little bit extra love in terms of flavor. So I like it fried, but I absolutely love it pickled. I will boil
pickled,
it.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's good, right? And I will boil it in a gumbo. I love okra. And then sometimes I also make a dish with onions and olives and okra and tomato sauce and lots of olive oil and garlic. I don't know where that's from. It's just something I eat.
Maybe we should be
enjoy it.
doing more okra here in the country.
Yeah, I don't know if people really like okra as much as we do, because apparently we love it. But
I know, but let's lean into it. This year could be the year of okra, 2020.
yes, I think I've read something about that coming up. How do I avoid a watery lasagna? No matter how thick my sauce is, I end up with it being watery at the end. Do you make a lot of lasagna? Big lasagna
I
fan?
make some lasagna. I've made a couple lasagnas this year. We have a
that's true.
recipe for for lasagna coming out soon. So
Yep.
I made that lasagna a couple times.
It's delicious.
It is delicious. So I'm curious why it is coming out watery. I don't know if it's often when I cook the noodles separately, and I don't like try to cook them within the sauce, and then I make sure they're nice and dry. And then sometimes I'll like spray them with nonstick cooking spray in order to keep them from sticking when you're getting ready to assemble the lasagna. But I'm trying to think of what would be contributing water in this sauce. Maybe are you thinking it's, Brian, do you think it's cheese that's going on, or like something with the cheese breaking, or do you think it's about the noodles going in wet?
No, here's what I think. And this is the thing that
Okay.
you and I talk about a lot with these lasagna recipes that we do, is that we don't let them sit long enough after we cook them. You know, like
I could
I'm a
get-
firm believer of letting the lasagna sit for like a full hour before you even cut into it. Because the
Yeah.
longer it sets up, the more those noodles are going to continue to absorb excess moisture, and the more steam's going to cook off the thing, and it's still going to be plenty of hot after an hour. But I think it's really important to give the lasagna a significant amount of time to set up. And I think people just tend
yeah.
to rush into it, and it's like a big slidey, slobbery mess of
We don't want a slidey, slobbery lasagna.
slippery, slidey lasagna noodles. I don't like it. But
I feel like that principle applies to a lot. I'm learning that principle applies to like a lot of food. I feel like all pies and chicken pot pie and sort of thing.
yeah, I think there's nothing bad comes from a rest. So, how do you allow meat to rest so it doesn't dry out, but it's still hot when it's served? How do you feel about
So,
that statement or question? I feel like
we get this question a lot, and it always surprises me. Because I'm like, if you sear a steak and then you let it rest 5 to 10 minutes, it's usually still really hot.
yeah.
So I feel like you just have to be a little careful and like not letting it rest way too long. But especially if you do one of those roasts, like if it were something like a turkey or a big chuck roast, you can let it rest like half an hour or longer, and it still stays piping hot. So
Yeah, this falls in the lasagna camp for me too. It's like, yeah, the bigger the roast and the the longer it cooks, the longer you can let it rest. It'll stay hot for a while, and the resting helps retain its moisture. But yeah, I think I always let my steaks rest for at least 10 minutes, and I still find them to be plenty hot, and they're really juicy. They don't never dry out. Maybe she's cooking her steak too long, past medium, medium rare, medium. That could have an effect on it. But in general, it doesn't tend to dry out from a rest. It only tends to dry out when you overcook it or cut it too early. And don't rest long enough. I want you to check out my little pig. Morgan is a huge fan of pigs, and I don't know if you can see that thing, but yeah.
Brian, that makes me so happy because I've got
Wait,
down here.
Wait,
It
what's
says
that
eat
one
more
made out of?
chicken.
It's a what?
It's a chalkboard. It's a chalkboard. It says eat more chicken. But
Oh,
I don't
okay.
actually believe in that. I just someone wrote it on it. I didn't write this, clearly.
Yeah, well,
I love it.
Obviously,
Well, I love your pig so much. It's very Cook's Country themed.
it's in your honor for today. So I know you're a fan.
Thank you so much. I am a big fan. I'm a big fan. So that Nava asks, is there any way to trim the fat out of a pork belly? I'm curious to hear your answer to this question.
That's a trick question. I mean, first of all, if you're concerned about fat, you probably don't need to be eating pork belly. You should probably buy pork loin. Second of all, I mean, pork belly is like 80% fat, so if you'll be there all day just wasting your time. I don't know. Like, this is a trick question. It's
I feel like it's, I must say, like pork belly is like what that like 2/3 fat.
It's like, how do you keep ground beef from falling apart? You know, it's like it's why is the sky blue? I don't know. You can't answer that question. It doesn't make any sense.
Is it upsetting your pig behind you?
Yeah, dude. This is great.
Kimbawe, I'm not sure I'm saying that right either. I'm sorry to anyone whose name I mispronounce, asks, what is the correct way to make homemade baked beans?
Well, you probably want to put, you want to talk to that Nava who's trimming all the fat out of their pork, and you can borrow some of that, and you're going to add that to your beans to start. I don't know. I mean, we have a recipe that we developed, for Cook's Country a while back that was, I think we called it barbecue beans instead of baked beans,
yeah.
but all the same theme, I guess. I don't know. It's
That has I think that recipe has like a trifecta of pork. There are like 3 pork products in that one recipe, I think.
yeah, there's at least sausage and bacon in it, and there could be some other item from the pig, most likely there is. I'd say follow that recipe that we could probably throw a link up to, but as far as the best, that's one of those items I rarely make.
Do you use canned beans or dried beans for something like that usually?
I'm a big fan of canned beans, and I rarely cook dried beans. I think when we all started to go into lockdown here in Massachusetts, I scrambled to find some dried beans. But at the same time, I also bought like 150 pounds of rice because I knew I was actually going to use the rice, and I bought like 2 pounds of dried beans, knowing I would never use them unless it was really, really dire situations. So I'm a big fan of canned beans because I don't need to spend a ton of time cooking the beans. To me, doing side dishes like that, if the beans are the centerpiece or the main attraction of the meal, then I'd say, yeah, go for it and use dried beans. But with something like baked beans or barbecue beans that have a lot of strong flavors to them, like sausage, barbecue sauce, bacon, you're not really going to taste the nuance in those from using dried beans.
Yeah.
There's a long answer to that question. Sorry.
No, I agree. I mean, hey, baked beans, people care a lot about their baked beans. I mean,
Yeah, I'm sorry. I feel like I let that person down. Kimberly. All right. How about this one from Reagan Mary?
Okay.
How can I dry fresh herbs after washing? I end up chopping a soggy mess. I don't know why she's chopping them before she's drying. How can I dry fresh herbs after washing?
well,
Oh, okay, I get what
think
she's
she's
saying.
saying
Okay.
she needs a way to dry them. Yeah,
Oh,
that's a
all
really
right.
good question. And I'm glad that she's asking this because it's smart to not chop them while they're wet. So what I would do is I would stick them in a salad spinner. Like often I'll pick the leaves off, I'll throw them in the salad spinner with plenty of water. Actually, sometimes I do as whole bunches, sometimes I do as individual leaves. I guess the whole bunches is probably easier, so I'd probably do that.
Yeah, definitely.
And
Yeah.
then I take it out and salad spin it dry, and then I let it sit on paper towels while I do any other prep that I need, and then run my knife through it once they're nice and dry, and then you don't have a soggy mess. So,
And what if you
It's
don't
also-
have a salad spinner, though?
you're
Like, in
really
that
trying
situation.
to trick me up
Like,
now,
what if you're
Brian.
roughing it? Yeah, yeah. Would you use a hair dryer set on the cool setting?
I mean, I
hang
haven't
outside the
tried
window?
that, but I think that's a pretty good
That's-
idea. I've got my
probably would
AC
work.
unit.
I just made that up, and I think it would work.
I feel like I just wrap it in pat it lightly dry with paper towels a couple times and let it sit on paper towels for a while I do anything else. Like I'd let it sit till it looks nice and dry. Because once you chop, if you chop it while it's wet too, I've tried this. It's not a good idea. It's not. I tried. Yeah, but it also makes measuring really hard because then they're all packed down and you bruise up the herbs and you're just
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
like, I don't know.
That's
not
a
a
good
good
tip. Well, that's good. That's good information.
So, yeah.
I like
so
Great answer.
learn from my mistakes. Okay, so let's see. So Gina M. Peterson asks, what are some ideas for using a bunch of shishito peppers? There were so many in my CSA. Do you have any ideas for Gina, Brian?
Yeah, actually, I had this problem last week. So
Good problem.
no, it's a good problem to have. Yeah, the way I typically cook shishito peppers is to heat up some olive oil in a skillet over medium heat, then just dump the clean, washed shishito peppers whole into the skillet and cook them till I don't know, about somewhere between 5 and 7 minutes until they're lightly browned on both sides, or on two sides anyway, and then sprinkle them heavily with salt. Put them on a platter and have them with cold beer or a glass of wine. You could also take them and just throw them whole once the stem is removed into like a chimichurri or an herb sauce that you do in the food processor or blender, because they're not too spicy, but they have a lot of great flavor. Sometimes if you want to get really intricate with it, you could cut them open and stuff them with a little bit of cheese and do that whole frying method. Or bread them and fry them, and you have these cheese stuffed shishito bombs.
That sounds delicious. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so write that down, Morgan, because we're going to have to do that for the magazine.
Cheese stuffed shishito bombs. Okay.
This is the way we come up with recipes to put in the magazine. We just start talking about food and like, all right, this is a great idea.
Okay, that's great. Will your kids eat shishito peppers?
Yeah, actually, when we came back from the farm share last week, I took my youngest kid, Tanner, with me, and it was the first time he ever picked those peppers. And he came back and he wanted to try shishitos, jalapenos, and serranos, all raw to see how hot they were. So he poured himself a big glass of milk and sat there eating these peppers. I was like, crazy.
It seems like that should be a dare, not like a for fun thing.
He dared himself to do it. Yeah. But all the kids got involved.
That's good.
It was fun.
What did they decide? How did it play out?
I think the serranos ended up being slightly hot, but all of them were kind of duds. For some reason, we're getting a lot of non-hot peppers this year, so at least up here
Maybe
in New England.
have him try a habanero and see how that goes.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't do that to your kids.
I'll get him good. Don't you
Don't
worry.
tell-
He's still got another
Don't tell
10
him.
years living at home. He's going to get it someday. We're going to do the wasabi guacamole trick, so that's coming.
Ooh, that's a good one. Yeah,
I'm
that's
kidding.
a
I
fun
wouldn't
one.
do that. I wouldn't do that. All right.
We with my mom, the first time my sister and I had her eat sushi with us once, and we're like, yeah, this wasabi is just like a nice little condiment. You can put a bit on there, like don't worry about it. And my mom ate like a massive
my
chunk
God.
of wasabi. It was so mean, but so funny. I love my mom so much. But
Were you
it
guys
was
at a
funny.
restaurant?
We were at a restaurant, yeah.
Did she start choking or
She
what
didn't
happened?
choke. She had lots of water. She ended up ordering a mango lassi to like get it down.
Oh my gosh. Poor thing.
I felt kind of. My mom's birthday's coming up, so now I'm like, okay, this is a good motivation to get her something a little nicer. A good reminder that
Get her some
she's put up
wasabi.
with a lot over the years.
I love your mom. She's so nice.
I know, she is so nice.
All right, here I got one from Casper Lauritsen. How do I get more flavor out of my dry herbs and spices?
Oh, that's a really good question. So one thing that I do, it depends how much effort I'm willing to go through, but often I'll buy whole spices and I'll toast them and I'll grind them myself if I want something really fresh. And that's really nice to do. I do that a lot with I'm trying to think coriander. I guess you could do it with allspice. Allspice is pretty strong anyway, so I don't know that you
Cumin.
necessarily
Do it a
need
lot
to.
with cumin.
Yeah, cumin. So I think that's a really good idea. I think another thing you can do is, I don't know, maybe this is a snobby answer, so maybe I shouldn't say this.
You
But
gotta say
be
it. Now you gotta say it. I love
be
it.
thoughtful about where you're what packages and containers you're buying. Just because I think a lot of those ones like McCormick, maybe I shouldn't say that. I don't know if I'm allowed to say brands. Get so dry and they've been on the shelves for forever, and then they kind of taste like nothing. And I don't know. We're even at my house now. When we're testing recipes at home, I did those sausage stuffed meatballs. We have some or sausage stuffed mushrooms, and I made them with Italian seasoning that had been in my pantry for
Yeah. I remember
Lord knows
that.
how long. It was not
Morgan
good.
and
It
I,
was dusty.
We met later on, and she fed those to me. I was like, gotta get rid of that stuff.
You gotta throw that away. So maybe it's also being careful what you buy, and also being careful how long you keep it.
Yeah, and I think don't buy if it's at all possible. Sometimes it's really tempting to buy those big 1 pound containers of herbs and spices. And I think, especially with the dried herbs, those things tend to go bad or just lose all their flavor before you could even get through that. If I am buying big containers of spices, I'll make sure they're whole spices like whole cumin, fennel, peppercorns, coriander, things that I know that I tend to go through pretty quickly around my house. And then also the benefit of having those whole spices that you could toast them, like Morgan was saying, and that really brings out a lot of their flavor before you grind them. But with ground herbs or ground spices that I buy, like smoked paprika, cinnamon, ground allspice, whatever, I only buy small containers of it because one, I probably don't use them quite often, and and I'd rather go through the whole container and then have a bunch sitting around for years that loses its flavor.
Yeah, I was about to say, that makes a lot of sense to me. I feel like they're not that expensive that they go bad. I mean, it would take you forever to go through one of those containers of spices.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so let's see. Nick Smith, 35, asks, is it dangerous to cook in nonstick cookware? Are there, chemicals, question mark. I have 15-year-old nonstick skillets. Do you want to take this one, Brian?
God, 15-year-old. That's a long time to have nonstick skillets. So I think at that
I just
point,
feel like it wouldn't be nonstick anymore. That would be
Yeah,
my fear,
that's
that
what I think.
it would lose its
I mean,
ability.
maybe Nick's really good at taking care of his stuff, which is awesome, and maybe the skillets are great, in great condition. But for me, I could keep a nonstick skillet. I have a 10-inch and a 12-inch nonstick skillet that I always have at home, and I will replace them every 6 months or so, maybe sometime sooner than that. But I buy like inexpensive ones, and hopefully ones with like that don't have too many chemicals in them when they're manufactured. But typically, yeah, we try not to heat them up without any food in there. We always have at least oil in the skillet when we're heating it up, preheating it before we add any protein or vegetable to it. But yeah, I mean, after 15 years, I would expect that your skillets are not nonstick anymore. But yeah, I don't. Listen, I could start a GoFundMe and I could get you some skillets. I feel like it's time to replace them.
I know. I usually think I'm a pretty tough on my kitchenware. I mean, we're all cooking from home, but I feel like a nonstick skillet lasts me like a year or two.
Who gets the last question? I think we should wrap this thing up before we get in trouble.
Okay.
You want to choose the last question, or am I choosing the last question?
I get to choose the first, so you can choose the last if you want to take it.
All right. Let's see. Let's just ask something that's kind of. Let me see. Let's see if I can find here. All right. Somebody asked, "What is your?" This is a good question. What's your go-to cocktail around Halloween?
Ooh, that's
I didn't
fun.
know Halloween cocktails were a thing, but we're all in quarantine. So.
Okay. Well, okay. So it would be
That could also be your favorite weekday cocktail, your favorite weekend cocktail.
midday cocktail while
Midday
working
cocktail,
from home.
yep.
No, probably my favorite Halloween. One of my favorite cocktails overall is an Aperol Spritz, and it's orange. So I'm like, that works.
Oh,
Actually,
yeah, you're in theme, yeah.
Yeah, I'm on theme. So actually, a few years ago, though, back when parties were a little more appropriate, I had a Halloween party with some friends, and we did, oh gosh, Lauren's going to be so annoyed at me that I don't remember what it's called, but we did a drink from, oh, this is not going to be a good story now. We did a drink that we dyed black, and we put dry ice, and it was from that, oh no, it was from that show that, with the upside down.
Beetlejuice. No?
No, it's from
What is it?
Stranger Things. It was
Oh, all right. See, I haven't watched it. So now I can't watch the season because you just ruined the show for me. I know that
Because I
something's
ruined
upside
it.
down and there's some smoke coming off a liquid. So
Okay. Do you have a Halloween cocktail?
I'm trying to think of something orange. I'll just go with a Negroni because there's a piece of orange zest in it. And we could just call
That's
it
a good one.
call it that.
That's so delicious.
All right. Well, I think that was good. I think we got through a bunch of questions and we probably helped no one. So that's.
I think we gave some life advice. I don't know that it was
Yeah.
wanted life advice.
Yeah,
But
I don't know how
some.
much cooking advice came through, but it was a lot of life advice. So.
This was so much fun.
Yep.
Thank you all for watching. If for more recipes and cooking tips and life advice from Brian and I,
We're offering that.
head over
Yep.
to. We are offering that, no charge, unwarranted. Head over to americastestkitchen.com, and we'll see you next time.
Great. Thanks.